Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex and this is Big Baby Reviews. Today is JAE Lee Tuesday, so we're looking at the next bit of comics he did that I have in my collection. This is WILDCATS Trilogy, issue number 1, June. I'm not quite sure what the year is, 93, 94? 1993, so busy boy there in the early 90s is JAE Lee, working for Marvel, finishing that up and then going to work for Rob Liefeld for a quick 32-pager, and now he's here at Homage Studios, Jim Lee Studio, with WILDCATS Trilogy, and oh wow, how good the art is in this issue and the coloring. I'd forgotten about that. This is, it's not one of those kind of more iconic or memorable series, at least for me, right? I do remember it, but vaguely. Not going to talk much about the story, just real quick. You're going to get a training sequence a la X-Men. Then you're going to have Grifter on a mission against the Daemonites. Grifter getting trapped and kidnapped by the Daemonites, and then Zealot coming in to save his ass, and that's pretty much the plot of the issue. What I want to talk about here again is the art and the coloring, just amazing. Starting off with the cover, it's one of those, I don't know what you call this, shininess, chromium, whatever the hell cover. It's not quite chromium because you don't have the embossing on the other side here. So again, it's chromium without the embossing. I don't know, but to me, out of all the kind of gimmick covers out there, this one actually looks really good. I don't think they were necessarily charging you more because of this gimmick. And it does, to me, highlight JAE Lee's art and the cover in a very nice way and just makes it more interesting. The colors are a little bit more saturated, I think, in this comic to a certain degree, and I think it works really well with JAE Lee's art because it's very dark and it kind of helps to bring out more of those elements in a funny way by using lighter colors, because you now have more contrast between the dark ink and the lighter colors. So I'll credit the colors when we open the book, because whoever it is really did a great job on this cover and on the inside as well. So of course the effect kind of I don't want to say taints, but changes the coloring and stuff a little bit on this cover. But I will say the coloring on the inside is consistent and really awesome. Just a cool team shot. I feel like JAE Lee's working a little bit harder on the series than he was for Rob Liefeld's Chapel story and Youngblood Strike File. He is going to be doing 3 issues. I'm pretty sure this is a 22-page comic at least, maybe more. We'll count maybe at the end, just to be safe, because like I said, at Extreme Studios, he just did a 3-parter, 12 pages, 10 pages, 10 pages, total of 32, and he was out. Maybe Jim Lee was paying him more, because I definitely feel like he's putting more effort into the art on this title as well. Like, again, already on the cover, he's not throwing everything so much into a dark shadow, at least not with Spartan here, and giving us a bit more folds and details. And slowly but surely, he's gonna work his way to that kind of more elegant, a little more down-to-earth style as far as the proportions are going. Not completely in the series, but somewhat. I feel with the women, at least, he's pretty consistent and still today draws the ladies pretty similarly to what we're going to see in this comic. All right, so Brandon Choi and Daphid Wynn story, JAE Lee art, Joe Chiodo is doing the colors here. All right, well, there you go. I guess he's off that blue and orange kick, maybe, or at least he's toned it down, because, yeah, there's still a lot of blue and orange in this comic, but that's fine if it's done well. Wendy Fouts and Ben Fernandez color assists, and that's about all we need to read there. So, you can't mistake JAE Lee's artwork, and right off the bat, you got it here. A different kind of riff on the old 90s vertical panels that I really like here. The balls to just twist everything here, right? All these lines kind of, give you a certain chaotic sense that I really like. And he even kept it up, not just in the panel borders, but also in like the architecture. And like, I mean, that's pretty trippy here to have this turn so much. Yeah, really good job here, just to start off and set up a mood. So there's, the funny detail about this, again, JAE Lee, when he took over Chapel, changed his look a little bit, made him a little bit more monstery. With Grifter, the main thing is, okay, the proportions, he's a lot bigger. He's got the same Chapel proportions, but he's just not wearing a shirt. JAE Lee's like, nah, I don't think he'd wear a shirt, so he's just wearing a trench coat. And of course, I've talked about JAE Lee's nipple fetish here, so in full view, I think mostly throughout this comic. As Grifter moves on, we find out that obviously this guy was lying to him, and he was basically working for the Daemonites, as I told you, and his reward, well, getting his face cut in half and being killed. Kind of gruesome, but in the shadows a lot, so kind of an interesting, very JAE Lee kind of way of doing it, right? And I guess as to not reveal this character yet, we just get the basic kind of 90s silhouette with some of those, you know, highlighted elements on her face. Kind of an old comic book trope by this point. So basically what we have here is a Danger Room session, X-Men style, only in a Wildcats book, right? Because, listen, if you hadn't realized, Wildcats is pretty much a ripoff of X-Men, right? Jim Lee and Rob Liefeld specifically weren't trying to reinvent the wheel that much. They basically started off with characters that were very similar to what they were doing before. Todd McFarlane, not so much. He went in a darker kind of direction. Eric Larson also did something quite different, I think, than Spider-Man. But yeah, Jim Lee and Rob Liefeld were the more kind of sure bet guys, I guess is what I'd call them. A lot of the art staples from JAE Lee are there, using the white medium here, all over the place, really. Even here, I'm not quite sure why, but I mean, it works and it looks really cool, so why not? And I feel like the colors are really complementing his art in this issue. There's just, you know, almost flat colors, some gradients here and there, but I think that helps because, you know, Image Comics tended to get very busy with that, and on JAE Lee, I don't think that works quite as well. Again, you know, I'm comparing this to CHIODO a few years ago when he was doing, or earlier on when he was doing Cyberforce, where the colors were just kind of too intense and too in your face. And I feel like he's struck kind of a good balance here. And again, keeping it fairly flat for JAE Lee is a good idea. The blue and the orange doesn't quite burn my retina like it did in Cyberforce. So yeah, again, you know, it's fun to see the Wildcats at odds and fighting themselves, but, you know, we know what this is. This is, you know, Wolverine confronting Cyclops in the Danger Room and almost threatening to actually cut him, right? And there's that old trope. Warblade basically is the Wildcats Wolverine, right? And Spartan is definitely the Cyclops. Once again, pretty much a ripoff of the X-Men. And that's the training session, basically. And here I like, because once there's less action going on, you kind of get a somewhat restful pose for Maul, I guess is how I describe it. Kind of funny that he has such a skinny thigh here. Proportions are a little weird for Maul, I guess, from JAE Lee, but there's something I like about the depiction of his face here. And there's a bit of flirting going on here. So some character development between Voodoo and Spartan. And again, JAE Lee, I feel like already is getting to that point where the way he draws the ladies is very kind of thin-lined and very elegant, right? And he was always pretty good at it, even from the beginning. So I just think the way he draws the ladies is really, he's really refining it, and isn't the way he depicts women is not going to change much over his career, as opposed to the men, right? Where he's going to tone down the anatomy and stuff. Sometimes just a weird crop like this, where she's in profile, covering up part of Spartan's face, and he looks kind of evil and menacing, I think just kind of looks cool. And smart drawing, because you've got the three basic planes, foreground, middle ground, background, right? With Marlowe here in his cigar or cigarette. I think that's really cool in the silhouette. Here's a shot color-wise that reminds me of Cyberforce a little bit. So now we're reintroduced rather to Grifter. So if, like I said, the costume changes. Just notice this too, these spikes just randomly coming out of his gauntlets here that he didn't have in the Jim Lee design. And again, surprisingly, you know, just enough backgrounds. Each of these here's the whole page of JAE Lee. If you take out this panel, that's just kind of a sound effect. Each panel has some background elements. So I definitely feel like he's working really hard on this one. If I had to guess, you know, he's doing more pages. He's doing a long miniseries. You know, he's going to be doing, let's say, we'll count at the end, like I said, but it's 22 pages. He's going to be doing 66 pages for Jim Lee. So you have to think financially, you know, it's probably more worth it for him, and he's getting paid more by Homage Studios. I could be wrong on that, but that's my best guess. Little interesting color details here, where they've taken the two shots of the character looking at Grifter on a camera and kind of desaturated it, and there's no black line stuff, just a, you know, cool little effect that really works. There's things in this issue here and there, right? Like this round window and some of the textures and stuff, and later on I'll point out some more stuff that I hadn't really seen this influence on him before, but I feel like there's a little bit of Sam Keith kind of moving into JAE Lee's kind of bag of tricks, right? Some of the textures and also some of the composition and the points of view and the angles and stuff. Some of the design elements, like I said, these round windows to me, and there's another one I kind of associate very much so with Sam Keith, and I see JAE Lee doing it here. I'm really enjoying the art on this. I had forgotten how good the art was on this series. You know, I probably read it as a kid and then didn't really go back through it in the last 30 odd years. So really impressed by this. recycling some concepts, right? We've seen these kind of demon cyborg guys before. We saw them in Youngblood Strike File. We saw them in that Spider-Man 3-parter that he did. May have even seen something similar in Namor, right? I mean, his generic cyber demon guys tend to all look pretty much the same, kind of a mix of like Death's Head and some Geiger kind of aliens textures and feel, right? Not complaining, mind you, they look pretty cool. I mean, all this gunfire on this page is pretty darn ridiculous. Ooh, is that a Chapel cameo? No, that's one of those demon guys. Oh, both of them, again, kind of look like Chapel, right? But man, the amount of spray and gunfire and bullets and all of that on this page is kind of insane, but still fairly legible and just very 90s and very dynamic. You know, this is something he does a lot, JAE Lee, where you don't actually see the gun, you just see like the retort and the smoke and explosions and stuff. Could have done maybe without the one on the face here. That seems kind of oddly placed, but and I feel like even the way he's doing the bullets is there's a little bit of Simon Bisley there. He's inking them really quick with, you know, double lined and stuff and not closed up, not refined in any way, which works, right? A bullet that be coming out, you know, it's kind of shaking and stuff. I think that works. Yeah, all these action sequences, pretty cool. Just a simple little panel here, but just having Grifter running here in silhouette. You see the arm, you see the leg, and the way he depicts the trench coat, almost like bat wings. It totally works. The angle to it, the fact the horizon is tilted, just probably done quickly, but just conveys exactly what it needs to. Some good storytelling with that little panel there. And then turns the corner, surprised by the guy who gave him the information, and realizes that that is not his friend Lonely, but of course a Damonite in a big Simon Bisley muscle JAE Lee thing punches him out, and that's the moment where he gets kidnapped. The way we get into, like, you know, the panels get wider and then we kind of come into a full page, so she was giving the sense that Void was somewhere else, right? Which he was. She was some sort of astral plane or whatever. Her powers are she can access different dimensions and time and blah, blah, blah. And I thought this was clever too, because, you know, almost like she's always somewhat in another dimension or in another world where, you know, he's clearly opening doors, but she's still in that mind space. Like, just aesthetically, I think it works really well. It's a great idea. At least I assume that's what he's going for, right? Like, he came into the doorway or he's opening two doors or something. And he's probably not seeing all this space and stuff, but she is, right? That's the sense I get from it. Very cool page. Good use of the negative space. Another page that just gets really busy, not with gunfire, but with like energy emanations. But again, it's JAE Lee just going like insane with this stuff. And I think it works really well and I really like it. Like, what a great panel. Again, I don't know if I would have put some of this white medium over top of the silhouette of the character. I think it just obscures her slightly, not much, but and you know, keep all this in where he wants it to be, right? In the emanation from this pool. But all of that works really well for me. The amount of it he uses, even down here for her hair and the eyes and stuff, it's crazy. Like, JAE Lee was already awesome, and now it's like JAE Lee on crack or something, or on meth. We got our boy Grifter all tied up here in a very interesting Geiger-esque kind of torture device, right? And usually this, you know, this could have worked as just a dark silhouette all the way down, but he threw in some of this lighter material here. There's a fire maybe under him. I'm not quite sure what that's meant to depict, but it looks cool, right? And that's kind of what's important with this comic. The old trick, the silhouette of the demons in the background, right, can get through some work really quick there. And basically these next few pages is just Grifter getting tortured by the Damonites until his sister Zealot comes in and saves him. Again, not much backgrounds on these pages, but I do feel like the colors are you know, more than making up for it in how good these pages look, right? And, you know, we've seen lots of background stuff on the other pages, whereas, you know, in past reviews on the Spider-Man 3-parter especially, man, those backgrounds were just non-existent. But I guess, yeah, I might have to take that back. It's near the end of the issue here, so I guess a lot of close-ups and stuff to avoid having to do those. And if you're going to do backgrounds, well, let's just do a moody kind of dark silhouette background to help contrast Zealot's figure here, which again, draws a great lady. Really good job. Like all these kind of metallic textures on her costume, the way he does it. Some of this I feel is like, again, from Simon Bisley, and reminiscent of some of the inking on Blood Wolf, funny enough, when Rob Liefeld did that short story in Darker Image. Getting really specific with my inking references. And boom, kind of giving us an idea of what's going on. Next issue, we're going to have a showdown between the Daemonite lady and Zealot, Grifter's sister, to the rescue. Another great shot of two ladies about to throw down. Great colors once again. Love it. Slightly desaturated, right? Not fully bold, as I talked about, which a lot of prior coloring would do over JAE Lee. I really think this is the best, up to this point, synergy between colorist and JAE Lee that I've seen. Really good stuff. Whoa, back in the day, wanted computer color separators, top rates paid. I guess you could make a crap load of money being a color separator back in the day, in those early 90s. That went away. I remember this too, the first time we saw some, I'm going to say J. Scott Campbell, but back then he was still Jeffrey Scott artwork. And now, you know, that I've realized that a lot of these guys, you know, back in the day I looked at this and I was like, oh, he's kind of doing a cartoonier Jim Lee, right? Is kind of what I saw there. And to a certain degree, that's true. But what I hadn't realized is that Jim Lee was doing a version, a slightly more realistic version of Arthur Adams, where Rob Liefeld was doing a slightly maybe cartoonier version of Arthur Adams. And even Tom McFarlane was taking some stuff from Arthur Adams. And this guy, J. Scott Campbell, was also influenced by the guys I mentioned before, but also knew about Art Adams and was influenced by him as well. So I see now that I'm aware of that, I see more of that Arthur Adams influence on his art. I always wondered, these circles they put on to like be a highlight, right? Jim Lee would do this as well. I don't think these are costume elements, right? I think that's supposed to be a highlight. So the colors is kind of fucking it up, where he should put like a light green on that. That's what kind of was intended. Just an odd choice to me. Like a color spot might work, but to actually line it out is an odd choice. It always looked a little weird to me when Jim Lee would do that on, I noticed on Magneto a lot. And this was a pretty big campaign for Gen 13, or was it still called Gen X at this point? But it eventually became Gen 13, right? Because it, you know, a full page to present each character. Burnout. And there, again, in the Art Adams influence I see is also the same kind of stuff that Rob Liefeld took from Art Adams, and I see where they got it. So this, to me, also looks very much like a Rob Liefeld face in a funny way. Death Made Black had some great art. Crappy story. It was fun to see, you know, the characters reinterpreted differently and see the Image guys do like a Turok or an Exo Manowar. But yeah, not that great. I do have a signed copy of this, though, that I think is pretty cool. I guess we'll look at this at some point. We'll have to. There's some, like I said, there's some good Homage Studios artwork. And not just because Silvestri's there, too. So some Top Cow art. And I always thought it was interesting. This cover is drawn by Silvestri and inked by Jim Lee. You got less and less of that kind of collaboration as Image moved along. So to get, you know, to see that again is very cool. And, you know, I see the Silvestri, but I see how heavy-handed Jim Lee is in inking this stuff, where it starts to look like him as well. But it is a cool kind of synergy between the two, I think. It seems like more naturalistic, more dynamic Jim Lee, basically. Was never really into this character. Blacklash, don't remember. Grunge was another Gen 13 guy. Freefall. I had some of these issues. There will probably have them somewhere. I'll look at them at some point because I really do like Mark Teixeira's artwork, and that was the main reason I bought it. Yeah, I need to do some Mark Teixeira at some point. It's kind of quite a trip through memory lane here because this is a pretty intense moment in my comics collection. Really, just a little bit before it started to wane a little bit, and I had my first purge there as a teenager. But I was still way into all this stuff here back in the day. So yeah, sorry. It is because it's that early advertising campaign. So it was still called Gen X. So this is probably the ad that made Marvel shit their pants and threatened Jim Lee to threaten to sue Jim Lee over the name Gen X. Obviously very similar to X-Men, right? It seems like... you know, Rob Liefeld had the same issue with the Executioners. Seems like Marvel thinks they can just copyright the letter X, which I don't think you actually can. But I do think it makes sense. At this point, the X-Men are pretty well known to differentiate yourself from them rather than associate yourself with them. But I guess sales-wise, in this case, it was like Jim Lee reminded, hey, everyone, I did X-Men, and this is kind of similar, right? there's those two visions constantly competing in the creative world. So what are you going to do? Commerce versus art, right? It's as old as time. Ooh, and I thought this was interesting too. I should seek out some of these issues because I always loved this particular image, this splash page by Travis Charest of the Wildcats. Don't know if the art actually delivered on the actual series. Never really checked it out. I feel like the first few issues had that Travis Charest stuff I really liked, where it was kind of a bit of a Jim Lee, but more illustrative, a little more refined in a funny kind of way. And then he kind of moved away from this, and he's still a great artist, but this is kind of I would say, peak Travis Charest for me and what I like about his art style. All right, guys, that is it for my Wildcats Trilogy Issue 1 review. If you are subscribed and you're still watching, thank you so much for your loyalty. I really do appreciate it. If you're watching but you're not subscribed, please do so below. It only takes a quick second for you. Really helps the channel out, helps us grow, helps get us out there to other people who are into comic books just like we are. We're on the road to 500 subs. That's where we start getting a little bit of traction, and YouTube starts helping us out since it's our first milestone with the algorithm to get us out there to other people who might be interested in the kind of comic book reviews that I do. So thanks again for watching, and everyone out there, have an awesome day.
Like, subscribe, like, subscribe.
King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KINGCOMICS.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.